Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing bamikalsen in a 15 plus 10 game on chess.com. Yeah, 15 plus 10. Let's play an opening I haven't played much. How about the French defense? Probably one of those defenses to e4 that has not been featured on my channel hardly ever in the past. I don't know, just not an opening I've ever been a true fan of for black because you create such a problem with the light square bishop. However, it's fully playable, and after e5 and c5, it's the next most popular defense for black, so fully valid. Okay, my opponent's playing the exchange French. Bishop d3. I'll stay flexible and just mirror the position. Bishop d6. Hope everyone's doing well, having a good start to their weekend. Why am I wearing this hat? Well, we got a blizzard here in Minneapolis. I was just outside shoveling, and this hat is really comfy, so I've decided to wear it. I got it in Iceland, and I wore it for much of the second half of my trip, especially when I was touring around Iceland, seeing the sights. And I also wore it on the plane ride home. It was just very easy to fall asleep in. Okay, so knight e2, I'm going to play knight f6. I remember in this system, so after bishop d3, bishop d6, that it's actually good for black to put the knight opposite where white puts their kingside knight. So if my opponent had developed the knight to f3, I was going to put it on e7 and look to play bishop f5. But I think when they play knight e2, it's actually pretty decent to put the knight on f6. So that's why I did it. Bit of a rating mismatch here, so I think I'll put this in the climbing the rating ladder category. Not that this isn't a worthy opponent just for the standard category, but I'll put it in the climbing the rating ladder playlist. And h3, so he's trying to restrict my light square bishop. Makes a good deal of sense. I'm just going to castle. Could be tricky to develop this piece, since he has taken away the f5 and the g4 squares. But no reason to panic yet. I'm seriously tempted to play c5, even though that gives me an isolated pawn. I think that would be an interesting way of playing this. So he castles. So my candidate moves here, c5, c6, if I just want to build the standard pawn structure in this line. Rook e8 certainly makes sense. Knight e4 even. Although knight e4 looks a little premature, maybe he can play c4. Kind of intrigued to take on the isolated pawn, so yeah, I'm really considering the c5 move. Let's try it. So c5. Normally I don't like to play with the isolated pawn. I don't think many players do. Most people prefer to play against it because it can just be a weakness. But it provides a nice challenge, and playing with an IQP is important because you do occasionally wind up in those positions, even if you're consciously trying to avoid those positions. Shoveling my driveway was a nice workout. Definitely feel the endorphin rush as I get ready to play this game. I think there's a lot to be said for some physical exercise right before you play a chess game. Definitely makes you think better. Revs you up. He plays c4. So mirroring my c5 move. Now, is the center just going to liquidate? That's probably what's going to happen. So in these situations, of course, you have to look at both captures. You can also look at keeping the tension. That's an underrated option people don't tend to think about. So a move like knight c6 is even possible here. But looking at the captures, capturing towards the center is usually going to be the correct move in these positions. So if I take d4, he takes with the knight. I can take with on c4, then he takes with the bishop. Be nice to attack that knight on d4 after that, but I don't see any particular benefit. I could just play something like a6 after that. It's a fairly boring position. Knight c6 is a little intriguing because I can put more pressure on d4, develop and attack that pawn. The other thing I kind of don't like about that is that my knight on d5 might be undefended at the end. Let's say knight c6, he takes here, I take with my knight. He takes on c5, I take with the bishop. He can play just knight c3. So still looking at those captures, looking at knight c6. Those are pretty much the only 3 candidate moves I'd seriously consider here. I'm going to take on c4, I think. Yeah, let's do that. So I was saying that the inner capture, so using the c pawn to take the d pawn, is usually what you want to do here. But I like this because it gets his bishop off of this diagonal, so I don't have to worry about the attack on h7 anymore. I might be able to develop my bishop to f5. Also, I want to see... Yeah, I'm going to play knight c6 now. I want to see if he takes here, I take here, and then after a queen trade, maybe I have a slight lead in development, and I've seized the d file. Don't know if that will be a big deal at all. I think it's still completely equal, but let's see how he responds to this. So this time control, 15 plus 10, is what in the past I've recommended as the minimum time control you should play if you're really looking to improve in playing online games. And ever since I started recommending that, I've started to think that even longer is better. I mean, if you have the time to play 30-minute games with an increment as well, even better. So take that into consideration. You're not going to get better playing bullet and blitz. I think bullet and blitz are mainly just an indication of your overall form if you're performing well at those time controls. But standard chess, rapid chess online, that's the best vehicle for improvement if you're mostly an online player, which I suspect if you're watching this video, there's a good chance that you play the majority, if not all, of your chess online. Even better than online games are in-person, over-the-board tournament games. Those are by far the best way to improve. I mean, you really see how good you can be, like your chess potential, when you start playing over-the-board chess. It can be a humbling experience. It can be a motivating experience. It is the holistic chess experience, though, playing over-the-board chess in a serious or semi-serious tournament. So let's consider if he does take, because I think that's what he's going to do. Take on c5, I take with the bishop. Probably he'll trade queens. He might try to keep the standoff going on the file. Okay. He could just play knight c3 here. But yeah, he might trade queens. And then I like the fact that at least I've seized the d file for now. Also, maybe knight e5 later could be helpful, attacking the bishop. Perhaps this d3 square could be a weakness. And I think that's smart what he just did there. He played knight c3. He's not in a hurry to trade queens, even though it's tempting, especially when playing a higher rated player, to want to swap pieces as much as possible. He's holding off on that. So knight c3. I'm thinking about bishop f5. I'm thinking about knight e5. Kind of leaning towards knight e5. Knight e5, hit this bishop. Because I'm thinking if he plays bishop b3, maybe I can sink this knight into d3. Is it premature to do that? I mean, it attacks his bishop. If I could win the bishop pair, that's something. That's something to work with. I'm also on f2. I like the look of that mini plan. I'm going to do it. Knight e5. I notice a lot more Norwegian players online these days. That's got to be the Magnus effect. Having Magnus as world champion for the past, 4 years or so. So, bishop b3, knight d3. And that's a slightly annoying knight because of all the things that it's attacking. Yeah, I don't think anything truly forceful is going to work here. You know, it's too crazy to play bishop takes h3 in this position. And I still don't want to take, because then his rook comes to the d-file. So let's plop this knight in. Don't really see a downside to this, and I might pick up the bishop pair at minimum. So this has been a pretty unexciting game through 12 moves, but learning how to grind out advantages from equal-looking positions is an important skill in chess. The worst thing that you can do is just zone out in an equal position and say, oh my gosh, this is going to be such a dead, boring game. I'm already thinking about what the next game is going to bring, or how I can sacrifice in a coming position or something, do something radical to change it up. No, like, just stick with the position, figure out how you can create some sort of imbalance, but not like going out of your way and playing too risky to create that imbalance. Now, I remember this game that I saw, I think it was Forgax versus Rubinstein from, I don't know, 1911 or so. I'll link the game below. But it was also an exchange French, and I was really impressed by how Rubinstein handled that game for black. So it's possible to create imbalances in even seemingly dead equal positions. I think sometimes we get influenced by top players when they're describing games. You'll play through a game on Chess24 or something, or be following a candidate's game, the Grenka Open, and they're interviewing the players afterwards, and both of the players are like, yeah, this was just equal and boring, it was a draw the whole way, but you got to keep in mind that those guys are 2800, 2750, whatever. And for them, yes, something like this, like, there's a very high likelihood that it would be drawn. But even at my level, IM level, I mean, it's possible to win games like this, and it happens quite regularly. Equal doesn't necessarily mean drawn. And I've started to pose him problems. I mean, I've got a slight lead on the clock, and that can snowball. If he plays some sort of neutral move here, which I don't think he would do, but let's just say for the sake of argument, I think I would continue with bishop f5 and just try to complete my development. Although admittedly, bishop c2 would put me in a pin. So it's possible I could take on c1 as well. I'm not ready to play knight takes f2. I don't want to trade these two active minor pieces for a rook and a pawn. Unless I had some sort of strong follow-up to that, I don't think it would be smart. Plays knight g3. So is he eyeing this e4 square? Is he looking to plunk a knight there? That would be my first thought. Takes away bishop f5. I'm still, I don't think, in a position to play knight takes f2. I like the look of just rook e8. Simply guarding e4. Make sure he can't put a knight there. Also, rook e8 threatens bishop takes f2, doesn't it? Rook e8 and then this. Rook takes and then rook e1 is a nice little threat. Funny threat, too. I think he's still unlikely to develop his dark square bishop because of the b2 weakness. Yeah, rook e8 looks annoying. What else? Again, could play knight takes c1, but I don't want to play that move yet. I'm going to go with the rook e8 move. And I think here he should play queen f3, if I'm reading this position properly. Even that, though, could get interesting for me. I mean, I was suggesting queen f3 principally to avoid bishop takes f2 followed by rook e1. Also, it threatens rook d1, putting my knight in a pin, pinning my knight to my queen. But there's some funny stuff I can do there. So queen f3, I wonder if even knight e1 or rook e1 are moves. Rook e1 probably not. I was thinking queen f3, rook e1, rook takes e1, bishop takes f2 check, followed by taking his rook. But then he can play queen takes f2, knight takes f2, king takes f2, and he's won a rook plus 2 minor pieces for the queen. That's probably too much material, even with a semi-open king. Queen f3, knight e1 definitely comes to mind, though. Not often you see a knight that deep into the opponent's camp. Because then where does this queen go? He doesn't have a whole lot of options for the queen. d5's covered, h5 is covered, f5 is covered, g4 is covered. He can go to f4 or back to d1 are his options. And on queen f3, I always have knight takes c1 if I absolutely want to play that. But I think I'd be more likely to go for the knight e1 move. Plays queen c2. So again, I could try knight e1 here. It looks so odd, and in this case, it's probably not as good because he has the d2 square open for the queen. But still something I'll consider. Wow. I'm just looking at the direct threats on f2 here, and they almost work. So let's calculate. Knight takes f2. Rook takes f2, rook e1 check. And that wins if he plays king h2 because of knight g4, h takes g4, queen h4 mate. That's spectacular. The problem is on bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, or sorry, knight takes f2, rook takes f2, rook e1, he can play knight f1. Knight f1 is playable. And in fact, just forced. That's such a nice line, though. I'm going to look at that a little bit longer, but I'm not currently seeing a solution to knight f1, as much as I'd like to find one. Changing the move order doesn't really help. I mean, I can't start with knight g4. Rook e1, I already alluded to. I think rook e1, rook takes e1, bishop takes f2 is not working. It's too much material. Yeah, I mean, there's knight moves. So I was saying knight e1, knight b4. But it's almost starting to seem like I should do something forceful here. Another move I'm strongly considering is queen d4. Queen d4 just pressuring f2, but somehow it looks a little shaky at the same time. I mean, he has moves like knight b5 there. Yeah, queen d4 is probably garbage. Let's look at knight takes f2 again. Knight takes f2, rook takes f2, rook e1 check, knight f1 forced. And how do I increase the pressure there? I don't see a really good way. Queen d6, another move that comes to mind here, threatening queen takes g3, while still guarding the knight on d3. So tempting to play knight takes f2 and play hope chess. I'm sure you guys have experienced this too. Knight takes f2, rook takes f2, and I just want him to fall for rook e1, king h2 so bad, but objectively it doesn't look right. Okay, now I'm falling behind on the clock slightly, so I'd like to play something kind of soon here. Leaning towards queen d6. Creates such a concrete threat. Still don't really want to take his bishop, and I don't see those knight moves amounting to much, honestly. Okay, I'm going to play queen d6 unless I see one more tactical detail or some important nuance with a sack on f2, but I've already looked at that continuation a lot. You got to tear yourself away from it. Yeah, I just don't have the firepower to follow up there. Okay, let's go with queen d6. Pretty obvious threat, utilizing the pin, but might cause him to make a mistake, and it looks slightly awkward to defend against. His knight on g3 doesn't have access to any of these squares, so he can't go forward with that knight. And I don't think he wants to play a move like king h2, because then he walks right into a pin. Unfortunately, that move cost me a lot of time. That was a 5-minute move. You guys can't see that, but that was a 5-minute move on my part. Probably too long. But let's see how he responds. I still feel like my position is gathering momentum. Even a retreat move like knight here looks very awkward for him. I don't think he wants his queen to no longer protect f2. That could lead to trouble. If not directly, then in the future. And also I get bishop f5 in if he does that. Yeah, that looks real nice. Maybe that's what I'm going to do. So if he moves his knight, I mean, really, where can he move his knight? Like, knight h1 looks pretty bad. I don't see a direct refutation of knight h1, but yeah, if he moves the knight, bishop f5 is an easy move to make. Connect my rooks, develop my remaining minor piece. I mean, one line I probably should have checked a little more closely is what happens if he does rook d1 here. I think on rook d1 I can play queen takes g3, and assuming he takes on d3 with the rook, bishop takes f2, because the queen is overloaded trying to defend both f2 and the rook. Yeah, and that's either mating or winning the exchange, because if he moves his king to f1 or h1, I have rook e1 mate. So this is not an easy decision for him. It might be best to play king h2, as bad as that looks. I don't think you want to play knight h1. Knight e2 looks risky. I don't see a direct refutation of knight e2, but it does not look like a move you want to play. Because he can barely move after that. And again, bishop f5. So let me start thinking what to do with king h2. Try to think on his time. King h2, h5 comes to mind. This is something you often see with a knight on g3 or b3, or if you're playing against a black knight on g6, b6, you can use your rook pawn. And especially so if the king is there. Although maybe he just plays bishop g5 in that case. I would still look at the captures on f2, but I think they still don't work. Yeah, I think king h2 is his best move. But he plays knight e2, okay. So, do I just play bishop f5 here? And try to play it quickly, keep the pressure on him? Leaning towards that right now. Looking at knight takes f2 and rook takes f2 as well. Not seeing what they amount to, though. It's just trading those two active minors for the rook and the pawn. I mean, that always slightly exposes his king, but what's the follow-up? Like, that's the problem. I mean, unless I could play bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, queen c5. Just on sight alone, though, I still like bishop f5 more. Yeah, let's do bishop f5. Easy move to play. Keep the pressure. I'm going to be under 5 minutes soon. He's already under 5 minutes. There is a, 10-second increment, but let's make him think. This could be another 2-3 minute move for him if he's not careful. So, from modest beginnings, this game became complicated and interesting. And I have the initiative. I like it. So am I threatening knight takes f2? I think that's a key question. And again, when you're analyzing threats, it's good to just assume that your opponent's going to make a null move, some sort of neutral move. So if I get another move here, knight takes f2, attacking his queen on c2. Queen takes f5 is forced then. And then do I just win with a move like knight g4 check? Knight on f2 to g4, that is. I think so, because then he's going to have to throw something in the way of d4, but if his king goes to h1, I have queen h2 mate is the crux of that idea. So yeah, knight takes f2 is a threat now. It's a big threat. You could play perhaps knight f4 here. It's a weird move to play. Again, it looks like he's playing with fire on that diagonal, but knight f4, because then if knight takes f2, queen takes f5, it's perhaps not as bad for him because the knight on f4 will block my queen from reaching h2. No, but I think... I mean, at minimum, I could play something like rook d8 and keep the pressure on. Against knight f4, that is. I mean, there might be something devastating after knight takes f2, queen takes f5. I'm not quite seeing it, but yeah, at minimum, just rook d8. It's good to identify moves like that you can play, kind of like the bishop f5 move that I played on the previous move. Safe moves that still keep your edge, keep the pressure on. Plays queen d2. Yeah, so again, rook d8 is just a simple move I could play here, bring another piece into the game. And now undoubtedly his development is awkward. That bishop is not getting out anytime soon. I have the suspicion he's going to play queen g5 next move. So what to do here? Maybe, yeah, rook d8 or even h6. Try to take away the g5 square. That would be some serious prophylaxis playing h6 in this position. But it makes a lot of sense. Like, why let him untangle like that? Because queen g5 will come with tempo on my bishop, so makes a good deal of sense to avoid that. Yeah, I think I'm going to do it. Useful move, practical move, throw the ball back in his court when he looks very tied down. I never have to worry about anything back rank in the future. That's a minor concern right now, but could be helpful. I don't think I have to rush this move. Let's just stop his next most obvious move. And he's got 1:30 left. This knight is kind of glued to c3 because I don't think he really ever wants to allow knight e4. I mean, he could play knight b5, but I just swing my queen over to b6. Plays a3. That weakens the bishop on b3. So I could play queen b6 here, which adds 3 attackers to f2. Knight, bishop, and then the queen behind it. Could also play bishop takes f2 first if I wanted. Bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, then queen b6. But I don't like knight g3 in that case. Yeah, I think better to play queen b6 immediately if I'm going to play queen b6. Let's do it. Those are the ideas. Maintain the time advantage. Could play knight g3 here. That move crossed my mind. Try to counterattack my bishop and add another defender to f2. Might be his best shot. In that case, I was thinking of just bishop g6, just backing it up. Because in a lot of cases, even if I don't immediately go win the bishop, queen b6 is helpful because after rook d8, the only thing between his queen and my rook on d8 is that knight, so I'll be threatening a lot of discoveries. And now he's really down there, under 30 seconds. This is where blunders can easily happen. He plays bishop c4. All right, I can crash through on f2 right away now. Question is which way to do it. Knight takes or bishop takes. Either way, he's going to have to move his king. Instinctively, I like bishop takes more. Because on knight takes, I think king h2 is a more valid option for him. Although it's great for me in both cases. But I'm just thinking bishop takes if king h1, then bishop e3 followed by knight f2. Could be deadly. Let's stick with the bishop. Again, I think they're both good, but I'll do this one. On king h2, he'll have to reckon with, even just queen c7. Queen c7 would have fork on the king and the bishop. So yeah, king h1. And now bishop e3, I'm thinking. Because what is he going to do there? His queen is banished to either d1 or c2. In either case, knight f2. Should just be killer. Could try to sack his queen for a couple of ragged minor pieces, but no, let's not make this complicated. Just one a pawn. Let's win more material. I mean, he could try counterattacking moves such as knight a4 here, going after my queen, but very unlikely he's going to do that with only 10 seconds left. Probably doesn't even work. I could even just sidestep like queen c6 or something. Yeah, queen d1. Okay, knight f2 or something else. Knight f2 just wins a clean exchange. There's knight takes b2 as well, rook d8. But nah. Go for the sure thing. Pre-move the capture. And I'm up in exchange plus pawn. Was still a good position. Lead in development too. It's a good defensive move. This bishop is undefended. Thinking about just safeguarding this bishop, playing, I don't know, bishop e6 or g6 or h7. Probably bishop h7 is a good idea. Now let's go bishop g6. Yeah, bishop g6. The g3 square is weak too, so I was thinking about, something like knight h5, but I don't think it's necessary. Knight g3 wasn't really a threat anyways, so plays b4. On knight a4, I was going to play queen c6, by the way. That's important to note, because the queen and the bishop are kind of tied to the defense of each other, but I was going to counterattack his bishop and knight. I think he's getting ready to develop this guy. Rook c8 would be an easy move to play. Bishop e3 as well. I think I'm going to keep it simple. Other than knight f4 is a little annoying. Let's go here. I want to be able to meet knight f4 with rook e1. So let's attack his light square bishop first. And then if the bishop moves, I can already play this move, can't I? If he plays, let's say, bishop b3 or something. I didn't notice that when I played rook c8. Ooh, and he lost on time. Okay, so wish the game would have continued a little bit longer. But yeah, this position is losing for him. Probably he has to play bishop b5 here, so that if rook takes c3, he can take here. But I suspect on bishop b5, I have a lot of good options. Maybe just rook e6, perhaps. Keep the pressure on. Rook here also looks quite good. Yeah, he's down in exchange plus pawn. No real threats. Okay, so let's review this one from the beginning. And I'm going to review this without the engine. On chess.com, there's not like a seamless way to go from the board that you just played on to the engine, which is one thing I hope they improve in the future. There is an analysis button, but since the focus in these games is, as I've always said, try to analyze the game on your own as much as possible afterwards, like draw your own conclusions, I think it'll be good just to do it without the engine and leave it at that. So exchange French. This doesn't tend to be the most exciting variation in the world, but it is still a valid try for white. For instance, on Chessable, got to get my Chessable plug in, right? International master Christoph Selecki, he just published a repertoire for white on e4, an extensive repertoire for white, and he recommended the exchange French. He showed some interesting ways that white can try for an advantage, specifically with the move c4, so trying to play c4 early on, rather than playing just simple development moves like my opponent did. So I was mentioning that one thing I remembered about this line is that if white plays knight f3, I think it's good for black to play knight e7, so as to prepare bishop f5, like let's say castles and castles. You can try for bishop f5 coming up and look to swap this bishop on d3. Note that here, the Greek gift sacrifice for white, bishop takes h7 followed by knight g5, doesn't work, because after this, even though there's no knight on f6, therefore stopping the queen from coming to h5, you have this saving move. You can develop the bishop and simultaneously defend h7. So that's one thing I remembered about this. But he played knight e2, and I decided not to mirror him and play knight e7, just play knight f6. Played h3, castles, castles. Yeah, now I went for the c5 move. And this worked out really well. It's probably fine to play the position in a different way, but I was thinking it might be tough to find a good square for my light square bishop. He's well placed on the king side, stopping my bishop from coming here or here. So I thought, let's take the play into the center, maybe the queen side. And I think the critical test of this is if he gives me the IQP like this. This is the isolated queen's pawn. That's what the IQP means. And then, play a move like knight c3, bishop g5 on the next move. Try to bring about pressure on d5 gradually. But I think black has a fundamentally sound position here. Something like this looks normal. Objectively, white looks slightly better here, but it's a game. It's a slightly unbalanced game too. But he opted to play c4, which I don't like, honestly. I think that's forcing things in the center too much. I don't see why white would be well prepared to play this move, let's say. Because in the coming play, h3, in fact, looks like a weakness a lot of the time. You can see later when he played that knight g3 move that queen d6 reply was threatening queen takes g3. So if you take away the move h3, if we consider that an unnecessary, maybe even harmful move to white, I don't think he's really prepared to take the play fully into the center. So I took this way. Yeah, again, I was considering both of the captures. That's what you have to do when you have 4 pawns in a square like that. And usually the inner capture is the one you're going to want to look at first, but I didn't see a reason to draw his knight to the center like that. That didn't seem helpful to me. Likewise, I didn't see knight c6 really amounting to anything. I thought it's likely that there will be just trades, and I wasn't sure I wanted my knight in the center in this case. If he just plays knight c3 or something, and we trade pieces, I don't see what I've gained. Whereas with the move I played in the game, so the capture on c4, I really like the fact that bishop f5 was always open for me in the future. Knight c6, just trying to get him to take on c5, which he did. And I think he played the right move here. But, I don't know, maybe in hindsight, he has to look for an improvement. And maybe this points to c4 just being slightly dubious, because this plan of playing knight e5 with tempo on the bishop on c4 and then getting the knight into d3 was really helpful, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a nice way to pressure this. And also attack these guys. Maybe knight c3 wasn't so great. Maybe he should play bishop f4 instead. To guard e5. Try to develop and guard e5. That move looks slightly risky, though. I mean, this isn't working yet, because he has king takes f2, and I don't think knight e4 really leads to anything. But somehow bishop f4 looks like kind of a loose move. I guess at minimum I can play this and then knight e4 and attack this. So already I think black has some initiative, and I think that's why c4 just wasn't a great decision on move 8 for white. And note here, if bishop b5, trying to guard the d3 square still, I can play a6 and kick the bishop to a4. Although admittedly, I mean, he could think about this. Bishop f4 and try to counterattack my knight. I guess I could play knight g6, or maybe even consider knight f3 here. Something like this. And say that he's shattered his king safety. I'm threatening bishop takes h3. So I think white has problems at this stage. They get the knight in. Yeah, and I have a feeling here white just needs something accurate to work their way out of the difficulties inherent to the knight already being anchored on d3. I would strongly consider either knight f4 or bishop c2 right away. I think those would be my candidate moves. I'd want to get rid of this knight as soon as possible, so both of those moves intend to do that. But as I was saying, on bishop c2, I could always just grab the bishop pair and just play this position. It's not much for black, but it's something. It's something to work with. That's very much what Rubinstein did in that game, by the way. Forgax versus Rubinstein. He got bishop and knight versus 2 knights on the black side of an exchange French. Slightly better pawn structure. He was able to grind out a victory. But yeah, I think those moves would have been stronger for white. His knight g3 doesn't challenge this knight, and as we saw, the knight was a target on that square. I think he had aspirations of getting the knight here, but after rook e8, they're not materializing. And it's interesting, I mean, one thing to note from this game is that I didn't always play the most outwardly aggressive move when I had the initiative. Several of the moves I was playing were prophylactic, or just maintaining my position, ensuring that I could set up future threats, but stopping his counterplay. So rook e8, that's helpful on the attacking front, because I was noting in some lines the rook could come down to e1, especially with a fork on the king and the queen. But primarily, this move was just intended to stop knight e4. So I didn't want his knight jumping to the center and attacking this knight and also this bishop. Yeah, and again, I think I would strongly consider bishop c2 if I were white here. I would want to trade that. So queen c2, I went here. So the beautiful line I was talking about over and over again, and If I made a mistake this game, it could have been here as far as my time management, because I spent a lot of time before playing queen d6. So I was just so drawn to this line. Knight takes f2, rook takes f2, rook e1, check. Because it's beautiful, right? If king h2, check here, he has to take, only move, and then queen h4 mate. Like, that's a gorgeous line. You want to play like Mikhail Tal in this position, but hey, if it doesn't work out objectively, then you really can't play that line. Unless your opponent's like in severe time pressure and you're making a gamble or something. Because I wasn't able to figure out what to do if he just plays knight f1 here. And I've sacrificed a piece for a pawn. I'm obliged to somehow justify that sacrifice. It is kind of hard for him to unwind, because note that with my rook on e1, his bishop on c1 is pinned. But I don't see a way to increase the pressure, and it feels like white's going to work his way out of this. I mean, if ever I have to do this, even though nominally the material is equal, practice tends to demonstrate that the two pieces, the two minor pieces, are better than the rook and the pawn in these situations. So I don't think I'm missing anything in that line. Take, check, king f1. It's just so tough, though, because I don't see how, if I could play knight g4 here, let's say, that would be fantastic, and maybe I could continue the initiative, put pressure here, but that square is covered, e4 is covered, so this knight is not going to be able to help. This bishop, I mean, what is it going to do other than take here? I mean, even if I played bishop e3, it's a cool-looking move, but it doesn't really threaten anything. Even queen b6 doesn't really do much, just kind of walks into stuff like knight a4. So yeah, I don't see it. These pieces aren't doing much. So I decided to play queen d6. I wish I would have made that decision a little sooner. Likewise, I don't think bishop takes f2 is anything, for the same reason. Here even more so, he even has the option of rook f1 in this case. Although rook f1, queen d4, I guess he could go to h2 though. So yeah, this doesn't look right. So I think I made the best move, or at least what looks to me to be the best move, but I wish it didn't take me 5 minutes. Maybe I could have cut that down to 3 minutes, because I did notice it. But it was hard to tear myself away from the line I really wanted to make work. That's one thing that even stronger players get hung up on, and I have to do better about. So queen d6. Yeah, and here I was speculating that he should probably play king h2, as awkward as that looks. He's already in very awkward territory. I thought king h2 was the best try. That's a tough move to make, though, because you get out of one pin, yes, but you walk right into another pin. I can see why he wouldn't want to play that. But I think it's better to be in this pin than the pin on the f-pawn. The pin on the f-pawn leads to more tactical trouble for him in a lot of these lines. And if he had played that, I'm not sure what I would do. I guess I could still play bishop f5, couldn't I? The knight is still pinned. Although then I have to reckon with knight b5. Counterattacking my queen. And if the queen comes over here, suddenly he can take this. So maybe queen b8 to keep the queen on this diagonal. This is starting to look a little weird. I'm not sure what I'm threatening, because if I do a discovery with this knight, he could take on f5 with the queen. I think he had to speculate on this line, even though it looks dangerous. I think that's the better option. After knight e2, and then this simple developing move, bishop f5, his development is really, really hurting, and I don't see a clear way for him to wiggle out of this. Yeah, and I think as I was describing the game, knight takes f2 is now a threat. Let's say he plays something neutral. Knight takes f2, discovery on the queen. Queen takes here, and now this key check. Not even knight takes h3. Knight takes h3 wins another pawn, and it's a double check, but I think much stronger to play knight g4, because then my queen is ready to come into h2 in the case of king h1. So all he can do is throw some pieces in the way on the diagonal, but it's losing. So he played queen d2. Is there anything else? I did look at bishop f4, and I think I mentioned knight f4 as well. Bishop f4 doesn't work, though, because after takes, among other things probably, but yeah, this is probably the best move. Takes, queen takes f5, take here, and I just win a piece at the end. I'm up a minor. Knight f4, though, perhaps could be tried. Yeah, I was mentioning this line during the game, wasn't I? Because then I was saying if knight takes f2 in this case, queen takes f5, at least his knight is here to block the queen from reaching h2. So this idea no longer works. I don't have queen h2 mate. It still looks very risky for him, though. And I don't see a knockout. Lots of tempting moves, but he's sort of defending against all the discoveries at least, right? Like if check here, he can go to h2 and there's no knight g3. But it's so nice, it's such a luxury in these positions to just say, yeah, you know, in the case that this happens, maybe I'll just play rook here and just defend the knight better. And I'm fully mobilized. You still have a question of what to do with this dark square bishop. There's still pressure on f2 and f4. I could always do something like that. Again, like it's really good to identify those moves in the midst of an attack and just to know that you don't always have to go forward. You can play like maintenance moves and still keep your advantage. Maintenance or prophylactic moves. So he plays queen d2. And again, exactly one of these moves I just mentioned. h6. I mean, if you were to give this position to someone and say, black has an attack, what should they do? h6 is not going to be the first move that springs to mind. But it should come to mind because we're looking at direct stuff here, of course. Like knight takes f2, bishop takes f2. I've been looking at those continuations on virtually every move. But they always seem to lead to the same thing of me just getting two minors for the rook and the pawn and not having enough follow-ups. But we do notice the thing that's persisting as well, in addition to the attack on f2, is that white has massive development problems. It's very hard for white to uncoil their pieces. So h6, when I've identified that queen g5 is probably the move he's going to play next, I think has a lot of value. The queen is kind of stuck on d2. If the queen is here, the bishop is not getting out. I mean, this knight has trouble reaching a good square. Knight g3, we can always play queen takes g3. Maybe he should try something like knight a4 here, now that I think about it. I don't know if I considered that move in the game. Just to challenge my strong bishop. Yeah, but I still really like my position. Bishop b4 or just something like this even. Looks very tough for him. So I think h6 was instructive there. He plays a3. Yeah, and he was very low on time at this point. Minute and a half left. And a3 opens up this queen b6 move. So I guess that begs the question, could I have played queen b6 on the previous move? I should analyze that. Queen b6, adding another attacker here. Because even without the direct threat on the bishop, that's pretty threatening, isn't it? I guess knight g3. Yeah. I don't like allowing knight g3 with tempo when my queen is no longer there to take it. And maybe that's what he should have tried in the game after a3. Yeah, he had very little time here, so I can't blame him for playing bishop c4, but perhaps this is the only attempt to stay in the game now. So that if queen takes b3, he can take on f5. So what would I have done in this case? Could just play bishop g6. Yeah, I mean, this would be my default backup safe move. Bishop g6, threatening to take here. If bishop c2, again, this rook d8 move's very handy. Looks very difficult for him. So there's that. I don't see a way to kill him, though. I'm still looking at the captures on f2, and a lot of times that knight just comes back to f1. Let's say in the case of this, and then check. Knight f1 is okay. I think probably even this is all right. Because if I take here, this is hanging. My bishop on f5 is also hanging. You know, some line like this is not altogether clear either. Because he has 4 minor pieces against my 2. So, yeah, I think he had to try that. I think that was the last chance. So once he moves the bishop, I take on f2. I think knight takes f2 also good as I described, but this looked quite straightforward. And a nice idea here is if king h2, queen c7 is a strong move. Fork on the king and the bishop. So king h1, and now the straightforward bishop e3. I had 2 minutes and 20 seconds left at this point. I don't think I should get fancy here. I saw that bishop e3 was winning material, so just go for it. I'm already up a pawn. Let's bank an exchange as well. The only safe squares for his queen are here, and they both run into knight f2. c2 you can't even consider a safe square for the queen. So, and I don't think counterattacks work out so well here. Again, knight a4, something we could calculate, but experience indicates that this should not work for him. Even in the case of something like this, just a lot of pieces under attack. Lots and lots of threats. Even bishop takes h3 is a threat now. So bishop e3, queen d1. Yeah, knight f2 check, pick up the exchange. Queen f1, I think a good try, but just nothing really to do here. I was mentioning this knight is glued to e2 because if he plays knight f4, threatening knight takes g6, I have rook e1, win the queen. And he did lose that time at the end, but the position is lost. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with the way I played that. I think this move, queen d6, despite being what even looks to me in analysis like a good move, I wish I would have played that move faster. 5 minutes in a 15 plus 10 game is a lot. That's 1/3 of your time, so it should be used very sparingly, those sort of decisions. I've even heard the rule that in classical games of 90 minutes per side with a 30-second increment, very rarely should you ever spend more than 10 minutes on a move, like extremely rarely. Bobby Fischer, for instance, was notorious for never spending more than 10 minutes on a move. And that's when games were even longer. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. If you're regularly spending a quarter or a third of your time on a single move, like that's not going to work in the long run. So queen d6, my time management wasn't good there. The move itself was fine, but time management could be better. But otherwise, I like how I played it, and I think that was an instructive example of how to play with the initiative, but doing it in a controlled manner. Moves like rook e8, h6, those maintenance moves, prophylactic moves, bishop f5 with the idea of rook d8. You don't always have to be going forward. Like, don't feel just because you have an attack that you have to crash through immediately. Sometimes preventing your opponent's counterplay, building your position, is the best way to further the attack. It'll yield the most gains. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this game, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye.